Hi, everybody. Jeff Gatic here from Student Travel Planning Guide, Premier Travel Media, and I am happy to have with me today Keith Snode, who is the Chief Operating Officer of Kaleidoscope Adventures. Keith, how are you doing today?
Great. Thanks, Jeff. It's nice to be here.
So I was hoping that you could provide a little perspective as to the student market and what's going on today is also what we see happening in the future. Obviously, Kaleidoscope is a well-known brand. For those folks that are not familiar with your company, what you do, give a little perspective of what Kaleidoscope did pre-COVID.
So pre-COVID, we were a student tour operator, 100% focused on students, mainly middle school, high school age students. We did trips for some college groups, some elementary groups, but kind of a full spectrum student tour operator, both domestic and international inbound.
So we know that this back to school season is unlike anything that we've seen before. I was talking with you a little beforehand. My wife is a school nurse, so she's on the front lines of all this. Tell me what your customers are telling you going into this school year. What sort of conversations are you having with them?
Well, it depends on the customer. It depends on the region. Some customers have, all customers have a resolve to travel. They really all want to. But right now, the conversation for all of them is how they're opening schools. So they really aren't having a lot of conversations about travel right now just because of the fact that they don't even know what they're doing to open their school building yet. So that has become the real issue they're dealing with. And we're maintaining communication with them. We have some trips that canceled last year, but rescheduled into this school year that are still on the books, and we're still working with those clients. It's an ever-changing, it just changes constantly on a daily basis. So I think right now, the mindset is let's get school open, and then we'll discuss the next step after that.
I think that makes perfect sense. So projecting out into 2020, we've talked to various segments of the market about what's coming back first, what looks good. What type of student travel do you see emerging first and foremost out of this? What type of trips? Where will they be going to? And will it be education? Will it be performance-based? What sort of crystal ball do you have?
Well, if I had a crystal ball, I'd probably be a lot more popular. So, but I can tell you that we're focusing on smaller groups. We're focusing on our outreach to the homeschool community in the United States, and also some big groups within schools that have a smaller footprint. So a drama club, a science club, folks that have a little bit more flexibility in how they look at things. But we're also looking outside of the school for different opportunities. So dance groups, church groups, all in the youth market segment, but just looking at different groups that might not need a school board's approval to do things, that have a little more flexibility. On the destination side, the response we've received so far has been closer in destinations, not traveling as far. Destinations that we can provide opportunities with limited contact. What I mean by that is, for example, Pigeon Forge and Gatlinburg have some cabins that we can rent. So a group of 20 can stay all together and not really be in a hotel where there are other guests. Where we can offer a private dining experience where the group is separated from the rest of the patrons in the restaurant. So focusing on opportunities that we have to keep the group as isolated as possible, because in a lot of the educational settings, the groups are in cohorts already. So they are together with people that they've been with since the beginning. And that is one of the approaches that some of the schools are taking. So by being able to keep that cohort together or keep that group together, it enables us to provide a safer experience for them and kind of meet their educational needs to be able to still get on the road.
So smaller group sizes, more isolation built in, that makes a lot of sense. One of the foundations of the student market is just based on the group sizes. You know from experience, some of these schools can travel with hundreds of kids to different destinations, and that allows them to drive pricing down and make it affordable for all types of families. What's the balancing point with smaller groups and you're trying to amortize transportation, tour guide costs, things like that, and probably not stuffing as many kids in a room, I'm guessing. So how do we
Correct.
balance the comfortableness with the pricing?
And that's where we're going to have to work with our suppliers, and that's very important right now on many fronts, because there are some costs that are just going to be higher because of the nature of how they're going to be handled. For example, a motor coach. If a group's used to be putting 50 people on a motor coach, and now they can only put it on 25, as we all know, that coach costs the same amount of money whether I put 50 or 25 on it. So that increases their cost dramatically. And how we look at the overall picture of their tour costs and give them options that enable them to mitigate some of that cost. And how we curate that tour now, that package for them, is very important, because we have to kind of look at the whole picture and go, okay, what are the underlying factors that we can't change from a health standpoint, and how do we work those in here without increasing the cost so dramatically that they're not willing to travel. So any help that our suppliers can provide in that vein is absolutely welcome, and how we can work together.
I think it makes sense. So you've talked about areas like Pigeon Forge. You think about the Great Smoky Mountain National Park and outdoor adventures. But traditionally, it's the Washington, D.C.s, it's the New Yorks, it's the Chicago destinations that are really popular with student groups, that sort of rite of passage trip. What's their path to recovery, where they're in more of a hotel attraction environment? What sort of things can they put into place right now?
So I don't think that there are. I think there are still going to be groups that are looking for that type of trip. I don't, I think there'll be less of them, and I do believe that in a regular hotel's case, there are things that they can do to be safe and provide groups that extra peace of mind that they need. Blocking rooms, and as we all know, on the tour operator side, some hotels are really good at it, and some hotels really need to brush up on it. And if you're one of those ones that needs to brush up on it, then now's a really great time to do that. Because if you don't know how to keep a group together and block them and guarantee that, then people are going to seek out hotels that can. So that's an important part of this process, because there aren't cabins for everybody. So we're going to have to use hotels, and having hotel partners that know how to provide us a guarantee that we're going to be able to keep that group together is going to be very important. So I think that those other destinations, the larger destinations are going to still see business. But I also think that the nature of student business is going to change just a titch because of this. When I first started in the industry 24 years ago, a lot of groups did a cycle of travel. And what I mean by that is they did their big destination in New York, Washington, D.C. On the performance side, once they traveled every other year, it was once every 4 years they would go to one of those big destinations. And then if their next trip would be something like, if they were from Ohio, they would go to Cleveland or Cincinnati or Chicago, something a little closer in. So, the idea that the student groups have kind of gotten away from that. They're kind of doing the big trip all the time. They're doing New York this year, then Orlando. And I believe, because of economic reasons, because of health reasons and safety reasons, that we might return to a little bit different cycle of travel for some of these groups. So I anticipate some changes that are going to, I don't know if it's a balance of how we divide up the business that's available out there, but I feel people are going to be looking at it a little bit.
So maybe a little more tighter geographical radius as we start out.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So I first met you when you were with Intrepid, the iconic attraction in New York, and obviously you guys did a ton of school group business there. Having worked that side of the business and now being involved on the front lines of the student tour business, what advice could you give to fellow attractions that are rebooting and are wondering, well, how do I invest myself going forward in the student travel marketplace? What's your best advice?
Flexibility. I think that flexibility is the greatest tool we all have right now. From a standpoint of flexibility, it applies to health and safety, it applies to content, it applies to just every part of what you offer as an attraction. I mean, we're looking at it from our standpoint as an operator too. It's groups are looking for ways to meet the unique needs that each one of them have. And we're going to be less and less able to put that into a cookie cutter model. And so being able to have a conversation and think differently about how we handle their needs and solve their problems is the only way we're going to succeed. If we put everybody into a cookie cutter model, then some of the groups are just not going to be able to follow that. And so it's important for us to look at it, ask good questions of our customers, and find out really what the hot button issues are. Because especially in the school group world, a lot of them have there are a lot of decision makers in the process. You have administrators, you have the group leader themselves, but then secondary to that, but not any less important, is mom and dad have to buy into it and feel it's safe because they're the ones fronting the money. So there's a lot of decision makers, and we have to keep our ears peeled for the signals of what they're looking for to make sure that those decision makers are comfortable.
You brought up a good point, the parental aspect of this, because ultimately they're the ones that are footing the bill outside of the car washes and cookie sales and such. And we've both seen firsthand how student travel can literally alter a kid's trajectory in life and expose them to things that they otherwise would have not thought possible. What's your message to parents coming out of this?
Message to parents is it's still one of the most relevant and powerful educational tools that we have on this planet, is to get people into a new place and see new things and experience new cultures and different people and different thinking. Travel has the power to transform more than I think any other educational tool that we have. And so I think it's very important that we don't give up on that, especially with everything that's going on in society, and that we find a way and a path forward that enables them to feel safe and secure in their travel investment, but still allows their children to experience the world outside of their home. So I think it's very important to find ways to make this work. And I would say the other side of that for all of us, especially on the tour operator side, is providing transparency for them in what their investment is. I think we've done a decent job of it, but I don't think we've all done a really great job with that. What's the cancellation policy? Why do I have it? What is it? So we're working on even more transparency than we had, and we had some pretty clear transparency. So we're really trying to amp that game up for our clients, make sure that everybody knows what's going on. But we're also a little more cognizant of our group leaders, and that our group leaders aren't travel professionals, and that we have a responsibility to help them more with their communication to those parents. And we've learned through this that oftentimes we were relying on them to disseminate information that they even didn't understand. So that it's time for us to do that differently. So we've been working in our business about how we can be better about that. All of those add an extra comfort level hopefully we're doing
Sure. Comfort level and will help project the industry forward. I think they're all good changes, and certainly we've seen some cancellation issues over the spring, unavoidable, and operators were put in a very difficult position. So I applaud you for what you're doing in increasing transparency and making people feel comfortable about student travel again. So Keith, again, thank you for your time today. Really appreciate your knowledge and acumen in the marketplace, and we'll look forward to better days ahead.
Yes. Thanks, Jeff. It was great to see you. I can't wait to see you in person.